everyone, today I'm going to be reacting to one of Alexander Grace's videos titled Why Do Women Constantly Belittle Men? And I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it.
The women's brains are wired differently, and I think the way women structure their thoughts, their actions, and even their emotions, they're all different to the way a man is wired. So I think it's difficult for both genders to associate, to try and understand, really understand what the other gender is feeling.
Do you want to know why women so often put men down? Why they tease them? Why they belittle them and insult them? Are you curious to know what the source of all of this female cruelty is? It's because women are dependent upon men. That dependency breeds resentment. And this is something that it's very difficult for men to understand. The reason is because as a gender, men are very self-sufficient. We're very independent. If we see a problem, we just get on with it. We go and fix that problem. Men are very proactive. We create our own lives. We actively satisfy our own desires. Before you begin taking too much credit for it, understand that that's not really up to you. This is just how evolution has created men to be confident, independent, masculine, self-sufficient. So because men are so independent when it comes to meeting their own survival needs,
I think an important point to bring up, I do widely agree with what has been just been said, but a thing that is important to bear in mind is, well, number one, this idea is completely just denied and debunked in the media all the time. So when you grow up in the current society that we live in, you think that this notion is ridiculous, and you're not even really aware of it. Another thing is, in practice, a woman doesn't necessarily have to be dependent on a man in today's society. You can have a job, have your own bank account. Of course, when it comes to bearing children, raising family, it's a different story. But it's more difficult to believe this notion when you have a lot of freedom and opportunity to provide for yourself. So most women aren't even aware of it, and I think that that's part of the problem. They don't really know where this resentment comes from. And there's also another factor that adds to this, which is men and women are now competing in the job market and just in society in general for, who can get the most popular on the internet and who can secure the widest audience and all these different things. And if by nature a man is more proactive and more assertive and, let's face it, less emotional, it will probably be a lot easier for him to excel in a corporate environment. And that in and of itself breeds resentment, because as far as women today are concerned, there are no differences between men and women. There are no advantages to being a man in a corporate situation. So there's this idea of, why are they, achieving more than me? Why are they getting ahead? And then feminism kind of pops up. Yeah, it's because of male privilege, and that's all. It's their fault. They're keeping you down. You're being oppressed. And that just makes the resentment even worse. So, yeah. Society and technology have changed. People have not. We still have the same wiring. We still feel dependent on men. And that's just the crux of the matter.
when it comes to romantic relationships, we don't seek out women primarily for physical means, more for matters of the soul. We want women for companionship, for love, for pleasure and enjoyment. Now, most of us grew up with this cultural myth that when it comes to love and relationships, women are these hopeless romantics. It's nonsense. Men are the romantics. Just ask yourself, how many great love songs are there by women written about men? Yeah, like there's a couple, but not many. Compare that amount with the number of fantastic love songs written by men about women. It is amazing that this cultural myth persists.
That is a good point to raise. I mean, it's not just even limited to songs. If you think about all of the greatest love sonnets, poems, books, I'm currently reading a book where this male character has spent about 2 pages going on and on about how beautiful and exquisite this woman is, detailing everything from her small mannerisms and way of speaking and the characteristics he's picking up about her. And I just I've read a lot of books, and you don't see a similar thing when you read books from a female written by women, describing men. And yeah, I mean, you have just asked the question, why does this myth still persist? I think it's just the concept of really romantic love has largely been created by men. And as human beings, when we're going to be intimate with someone, we want them to, share experiences with us. So men just kind of assume this is what love is, this is what romantic love is. And I think it's a projection of male love onto women. I don't have many friends who are hopeless romantics, and even the friends that I do have who appreciate romantic things, if I ask them, why do you like these things? Why do you search for these things? They will say, well, I read it in a book, I saw it on TV, someone I know who's been in a relationship, this is what they did. It's kind of like we feel that's what's expected of us in a weird way. We're always told that we're the more romantic ones. So that's why this myth persists, because just it continues from generation to generation, is what you're told, and we just kind of go along with it because, well, that's what appeals to men.
Men are obviously the more romantic ones. You might say, but Alex, women are the ones who read romance novels. Isn't that proof that women are romantics? Not really, because if you actually look at the themes that are explored in those romance novels, they're not about all the things that a woman does to attain the man, all the things that she has to sacrifice for the man that she loves. Those books contain stories of women being rescued, of women being the recipients of romantic love and romantic gestures. It's the men in those books who are doing all of the heroic deeds, all of the sacrifice for the sake of the woman. And if you hear a man express his love to a woman, you'll often hear it in that sacrificial language, like, I would do anything for you, I would give up everything for you, I'd swim an ocean to get to you, I'd die for you, whatever it is. This is the truth of gender dynamics. Men bring the romance, women receive the romance.
Yeah, I do agree with that as well. We're very passive when it comes to romantic things. Our job is kind of to just show up, really. And the thing about those romance books is they're not really known specifically for the romance. They're more known for their raunchiness, and they are essentially just carbon copies of each other. I'm talking about the ones where the man is all jacked up and the woman's like fainting in his arms on the cover. Yeah, those books. And there's always some kind of scandal that they have to overcome, and it's like really sexually charged, and there's all this tension, and it's all exciting. That's what those books are predominantly known for and pursued for. If you were to discuss one of these books with your female friend, you're more likely to talk about the coitus that happens in it than anything else. Not really the cute little romance or the rescuing or anything like that.
I apologize if I'm currently shattering your beliefs about female nature, but you've got to understand this. Women are not the romantic ones. When it comes to love and relationships, women are primarily practical. Now, me saying that women are not terribly romantic, that's not meant as a judgment. If you think that this whole thing is about judging women, you've completely missed the point. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just explaining this is the way that evolution has made women. You see, women have always had the primary responsibility for raising the children. The children's survival needs needed to be at the forefront of her consciousness, and so obviously she has to be very practical in her outlook. She's busy breastfeeding, she's busy raising small infants. She can't be out hunting animals, building shelters, anything like that. She's got responsibilities when it comes to child rearing. Now, because the woman is busy breastfeeding and raising small infants, all of that stuff, she's not able to go out and hunt deer or build shelters. And that's why she is dependent upon a man for her survival. Perhaps deep down, she would love to get lost in pure expressions of love, pure romanticism. But somebody has to be taking care of the children. Somebody has to keep survival at the forefront of their consciousness.
I think another important thing to bring up here is on the subject of children, even if the women you're with or are around don't have children themselves, or are not even near an age where they're even thinking about having children, it's still there. It's still in the back of your mind. It's still something that is considered. And that does play into it. You know, is this man going to be a good protector, a good provider? Is he going to let me and my children down? How can I continue the species if I cannot be provided for? Because you're right, it's not practical to go out and hunt a deer with the screaming child in your arms. Children require a lot of attention and a lot of reassurance and a lot of love, and they're very, very demanding. So you can't really do the two things at once, and that's why nature has done its thing, basically. And another point I want to bring up is we do value companionship and intimacy and connection, obviously, and we do have feelings, but it's not the priority. We don't have the luxury of that being the priority, because, you know, love and romance can be very self-indulgent. You spend a lot of time thinking about it, and when you have other priorities like children demanding things from you all the time, you can't get lost in that romanticism, basically. So that's another thing to consider. It's not, you know, many men in the manosphere painted as, oh, we're just these cold, heartless people that are completely pragmatic about, you know, our conduct towards men. There is a lot of that present in our thinking, but that doesn't mean that we don't feel things and that we don't value connection.
Being so vulnerable and having instincts that are so finely attuned to survival, love and relationships have to, at least on some level, be a matter of practicality for women. If a woman's husband dies, of course she's going to feel sad, of course she's going to grieve, but she also has to consider the practicalities of the situation. She has to think about her children. Now that the husband is no longer around to provide, what is to become of them? While the idea of a wailing widow, a woman who just spends the rest of her life mourning her dead husband, sounds terribly romantic, evolution is not interested in romanticisms. Evolution is interested in survival and practical matters. This is why evolution gave women the instincts to be able to move past their grief and secure a new partner. She's sad for a time, but before long she has to move on and find a new partner, somebody who is capable of providing for her and her children. Here is the biological truth. Women cannot survive on their own. They were not designed to do so. I'm not putting down women. This is just how evolution works. When figuring out what instincts to prioritize in women, evolution decided that they needed to max out on nurturing and child raising capacity, because the survival matters weren't important for women to figure out because men were around. Men were taking care of that. When things are going well in a tribe and all of the men and women are partnered up and happy, things work really well like this. It's very, very efficient because each gender plays to their strength and they cooperate to make sure that everybody's needs are met. So while men and women are working together, things are going fine for the tribe, but there is a hidden cost to all of this efficiency, and that's that women feel vulnerable and they feel dependent upon the men. If you take a man and you strand him on an island and he has to hunt his own food and build his own shelter and all of that stuff, he'll probably be okay. But if you take a mother and give her a couple of screaming infants and put her on that same island to survive by herself, she's got no chance.
Again, I can see in an attempt to kind of shut down this argument, it would just be Yeah, well, we live in society now. We're not on an island. None of this is applicable. The fact remains that's how our brains are wired. We still live in a barbaric, you know, world in our biology and psychology. And truth be told, when there are natural disasters, when there are wars, who does most of the saving? Men do. Yeah, there you can make the argument, oh, there are women in the army now and female police officers. They still make up a tiny, tiny, tiny minority. So, yeah, that's just the reality of the situation.
She was not designed to survive. That's not what evolution created women to do. Evolution gave women the instincts to find strong and powerful men who could help them survive. And this is the reason why women are so often putting men down. It's because of that insecurity, that vulnerability, that dependency that they feel. Love and matters of the heart is not just some fun, romantic fantasy for women. It actually has real world significance. Their relationship brings up concerns about survival. Now, think about how big of a deal it is that of all of the men in the world, she chose you to be her partner. That is massive. She chose you because she believed in your masculinity. She believed that you were the man who is best suited to provide and protect her. She has invested the best years of her life in you. She has used her youth to secure you as a partner. So what happens if she senses that she has made a bad investment? If all that she'd sacrificed for you and the relationship was for nothing? That is
It's akin to betrayal when a woman has invested in a man and for whatever reason he doesn't live up to the expectations. Now, I accept the fact that, especially nowadays, these expectations can be really blown out of proportion and just completely unreasonable. But it is like a betrayal, and usually what I've witnessed is it causes a lot of resentment, and not just towards the supposed male that has failed, men as a whole. That's, that's why these women who feel like they have been let down and betrayed are so just bitter and resentful towards life in general, really. And think of it this way: as Alexandra said, you've given up your best years, you've given up your most attractive years, your best years for acquiring a partner. And it's even worse if you've already had kids, because if you're, the man that you're with lets you down and can't provide for you and the family anymore, the chances of you acquiring another male is it's just more difficult, because the fact of the matter is, when you have children, your entire body changes. Oftentimes you put on weight, you get stretch marks, things sag, and you're exhausted from looking after infants. So you're not nearly as attractive as you were, and that also causes a lot of insecurity. So if she even gets an inkling that you're not going to fulfill this protective provider role, it's really not going to turn out well. I mean, for either of you in the long run, or the kids, because it's not good to have a mother just constantly berating or ridiculing their dad in front of them. But yeah, it's like a betrayal.
It's going to trigger very real survival fears. That is going to bring forth all of these deeply rooted evolutionary instincts. If she invested in you and she feels like you're not living up to what her expectations are, she will be furious. This anger is very, very real for women. It's difficult for men to understand because there's not really a comparable emotion, at least as it relates to survival fears for men. But for women, all women, they'll know this feeling. She's angry at herself for making a bad choice, while simultaneously being angry at you for not living up to the person that she wanted you to be.
One thing I will say to that is, yeah, you may as a woman be angry at yourself, but I do speak from experience when I say this. Women, we don't like being angry at ourselves, so we would take not only will we have anger towards the man who's let us down, the anger that we would have put towards, self-reflecting and being angry at ourselves and our bad investment, we oftentimes add that to the anger that we have towards you. So you get like double rage. Yeah, that's another thing to consider. We don't really like being responsible when yeah. Okay.
This is why she nags. This is why she complains. This is why she belittles. This is her way of punishing you for not being the man that she wanted you to be. Now, I'm not excusing this behavior. It's childish, it's immature, and it's a sign that she's a low quality woman. High quality women speak honestly and openly about their concerns. They don't resort to little passive aggressive jabs. Plus, this whole thing might be her fault. Maybe she had unrealistic expectations. Or maybe it was the result of her actions that have worn you down to this point where you're no longer living up to your masculine ideals.
Yeah, that's another thing. As I said earlier, expectations, modern women have ridiculous expectations, all the while not accepting any expectations of them. They're just like no standards, in my opinion. So I think if you're in this situation, you need to look at it rationally and see, well, are these expectations realistic? Alexander has acknowledged that you shouldn't accept this. You should not tolerate this kind of behavior. If you are in a situation where the woman you're with, or even just around like a friend or anything like that, is persistently, berating you, ridiculing you, belittling you, especially if it's in front of other people, because that just, heightens the humiliation. It's awful being in that position. And yeah, women hate that. We hate being humiliated in front of other people. It's one of the things we really, really don't like, and that's why shame is so effective on us. So if a woman is doing that to you, knowing how she personally would really hate that if you did that to her, then that is a big sign that she's very, very low quality. And if you have confronted them, God forbid, on multiple occasions, and they have not accepted any responsibility or made any, effort to reflect and find out, oh, why am I behaving this way? Where is this anger coming from? Or change their behavior. You're well within your rights, just for your own sanity, your own peace of mind, and your own sense of self-respect, to, not put up with that. Let it go. Another thing that I will say, I know that women do watch this channel. If you have a friend, a female friend, who constantly belittles you, and just, making snide remarks and jabs at you all the time, you're also well within your right to cut them off and decide not to be friends with them. People have their own insecurities and bad thoughts and self-deprecation as it is in their own minds. You don't need other people adding to that. And I think I'll end this reaction on that note.